camera are blocked. But yeah, if you have any question, you can raise your hand and I will unmute you. Or otherwise, you can ask your questions or anything with your suggestion in the chat as well. Okay, thank you. Daniel, over to you, please.
Yeah, thank you for the intro. Hello and welcome once more on today's webinar. And today's topic will be ECCoSP installation and upgrade on Unix platform, which Peter already said. So let me introduce myself. My name is Daniel Janota, and since 2021, I'm the analyst of the ECCoSP development.
And I'm Kašmir Žižek, currently IT project manager in Unicorn, and I specialized on ECP applications in the maintenance, and also I do some consultancy for ECCoSP development team.
Yeah, so regarding the agenda, we will share some new features in the latest release. And then we will check some prerequisites and general information. So some hardware requirements, network flows, deployment types, etc. And this will be followed by the practical part, and part of it will be the installation, configuration, and registration of ECP endpoint and EDX toolbox together with Java 17 installation, and then the upgrade of the ECP endpoint and EDX toolbox. So let's start with new features in the latest release. So in the latest release, specifically versions ECP 4.11 and EDX 1.12, we have upgraded Java from 11 to 17. So latest ECCoSP versions using Java 17. We have also changed some operating system support. So we are now supporting Oracle Linux 8 and 9 together with their Red Hat Enterprise Linux versions. And the support for CentOS 7 and 8 was discontinued. Regarding the databases, we have added the support of MS SQL 2019 and removed the support for MS SQL 2016 and MySQL 5.7. There were also some compatibility changes. So the latest versions are not compatible with ECP 3 anymore. So the compatibility job was removed. And also due to TLS and Cypress changes, the latest version is not compatible with ECP 4.7.2 and EDX 1.8.2 or some later version. We have also added the full support of Kubernetes deployment, so all Helm charts for all components are now part of the release delivery. We have also added external authentication for web services, so now you can use Keycloak or LDAP for web services. We have extended the Prometheus metrics to cover also the ECP broker, so you can monitor the queues and memory usage, etc. And we also did some changes to make the network configuration syntax update a little bit easier for EDX networks. So let's move to the next topic, and that will be some general information and prerequisites for the installation of ECCoSP. All information about the installation upgrade can be found in ECP and EDX installation and upgrade guides. And if you are interested in more information about the release, about the list of all changes, compatibility matrices, etc., that can be then found in ECP or EDX release notes. let's take a look on hardware requirements. There was no change compared with previous version of ECCoSP. We are still using the same requirements. So 4 cores for ECP endpoint, together with 8 GB of RAM and 40 GB of storage. And for toolbox, then there is 2 cores, 4 GB of RAM and 20 GB of storage. Please know that the real requirements may differ depending on the message traffic, the server load, etc. We also recommend the usage of virtual machines because they can be easily resized when you find out that more resources are necessary. Regarding the network flows, there are some ports that would need to be open in a firewall. So for the messaging, it will be necessary for ECP endpoints to open the flows for ports 5671 and 5672. The 5671 port is used for the communication with ECP broker, and 5672 is then used for the internal broker of the ECP endpoint. And for graphical user interface, REST API, and web services, also the 8443 port would need to be opened. In case of EDX toolbox, there are also 2 ports, so 8443 by default, but if you're running the ECP and EDX on the same server, it will be also necessary to change this port to, let's say, 9443 or something like that. So there will be no collision with the ECP endpoint. And then also the port for internal broker, so 5672. So together with this port, it will be also necessary to open flows for external database if you want to use one of those, but we will get to that later. Regarding the communication protocols, ECCoSP uses QPS for messaging and HTTPS for REST API, graphical user interface, and web services. Everything by default with SSL enabled. Now let's take a look on deployment types. We have two possibilities how to deploy the ECCoSP. First one is standalone deployment, which is the simplest installation option. In this mode of deployment, no other services are required, such as database, because ECCoSP can use and is using by default embedded Apache Derby database, and this database is then fully managed by the application. Then we have high availability deployment option, and that can be used for clustered deployment, etc. It is connected to the external database, so basically 2 nodes of the ECP component are connected to the same database, and they are running as one component. And also, when one of them goes down, the system will still continue to function without any outage. Also, it is possible to use database cluster for the high availability deployment. And regarding the support databases, ECCoSP currently supports Oracle 19c, MS SQL Server 2019, MySQL 8, and PostgreSQL 13. You can see the default ports on the screen. So those are the external databases you can use, but you can also use the Apache Derby, as I already mentioned, as a embedded database. Also, before the installation of the ECCoSP and when you want to use the external databases, it's recommended to check the ECP and EDX installation guides, chapters, external databases, or in case of EDX, external database, where can you find how to create schemas and some specific configuration for the database. Also, another topic is how to obtain the ECCoSP installers. For the ECCoSP client, you can download it from the ENTSO-E ECCoSP page. On the link you can see on the screen, so ECCoSP/ECP or EDX. And in the case of central components, then you would need to contact ENTSO-E and ask them for the access to the shared file. This access can be granted by push-pin checkout. Also, before the installation, you need to obtain some component codes. As the component code, the energy identification coding or EIC scheme can be used. Mostly it's used the object type V, so V code, and this code can be given by the local or some central issuing office for a country. So you need to contact them too, and they will provide you with the code, and you can proceed with registration. Also, please note that the codes must be unique within each ECP network and also all synchronized ECP networks, but this should be covered by the issuing office or by the component directory administrator. Yeah, that will be everything for the theoretical part. If you have any question, you have space. Not, so we can continue with the practical part, which will be installation and upgrade of ECP endpoint and EDX toolbox. So regarding the installation, we'll proceed also with installation of Java 17, and then we will install ECP endpoint, register it, and also install EDX toolbox and use the basic configuration of it. Regarding the upgrade, we will upgrade the Java if it's necessary for this release, and also upgrade ECP endpoint and EDX toolbox. So let's start with installation. As I mentioned, we will firstly install Java 17, and a little typo in the presentation, sorry for that. We'll install Java 17, and then both ECP and EDX applications together with encrypted passwords. So let's check the documentation. Let's check the installation guide, specifically chapter 5. There will be a description of 5.1. There will be the description of Java 17 installation. So for Linux, it's here, and we'll be using the Unix repositories. So we will install it via yum install command. And then we will need to change one property in the java.security file. And that will be everything for Java installation. So let's connect to the server. So we can check the Java version. All right, so for some reason there is already Java installed, so let me just delete it. Real quick, maybe some mistake in the preparation. Sorry for that. So right now there is no Java installed, so we can proceed with the installation. We will use the yum install Java 17 OpenJDK command. Yeah, I will confirm this, and Java will be installed. And this will take a few moments. Then, so Java is successfully installed. You can check this by this command, so you can see that Java 17 is installed. And right now, we will proceed with a configuration change. So we will move to the usr JVM folder, to the Java folder, and then conf and security, and we will update the java.security file. Let's move there. So usr JVM Java conf and security. Here is the Java security file. I will edit it. We need to find the secure random property and change its value from /dev/random to /dev/new-random. Yeah, here's the property. So we'll change the value to random. Save the file, and that will be everything for the Java. So we can continue with the installation of ACP endpoint. We will move to chapter 7.4. Here, 7.4. So the installation on Linux. So the ECP application installation is pretty simple, just RPM -I and the RPM file. The application will be installed, and there will be basically everything for installation. We'll just start it and register it. But also we will configure the encrypted passwords. So let's move to the correct directory. Here are the RPM installer files. So via RPM -I will install the ECP endpoint. and also set up the encrypted passwords. This process is described in chapter 748, custom password. You can see that we would need to execute the configure password script located in etc ECP endpoint. Here's the description, so we will select which form of user passwords we want to, so we'll use encrypted. Also for technical password, same. Then we will proceed with the rest, the script, the procedure. Let's move to TCP endpoint. Here's the configure password script, so I will execute it. I will choose the option 2, encrypted, and also encrypted for technical accounts, some encryption key. Also confirm. I will use the default encryption algorithm, so I will just hit the enter, and now I can just paste the password there. You can see that we are setting up the password for administrator account, authentication key store, internet broker, and also key stores in the database. Right now, the password should be encrypted, and we can start the application. But before that, I will also change the configuration in users and groups properties, because it will be needed for the EDX toolbox part. So basically, just here you can see that the password is encrypted, and I will add toolbox here, password, and also the group's properties. This is needed, and it's prerequisite for the EDX toolbox installation to establish the communication between them. Also here. Right now we can start the application, and the starting is mentioned in chapter 7.4.4. So yeah, here starting and stopping ECP endpoint. So for the start, I will use the systemctl start ECP endpoint command. Yeah, and I forgot, because we have changed the passwords. I need to also run the daemon reload, because the service was changed. The password there was changed, and then started. Point started, so I can again. We are on the registration screen. The registration process is described in chapter 8, together with basic smooth test. So the registration process, specifically in chapter 8.2, is pretty simple. Just access the user interface, login into a GUI, fill the zone here with the registration key store, which will be provided by ECP component directory administrator, fill the passwords, then fill in some information about the component directory itself. So in this case, it will be the URL of the component directory and its code. And then also some information about the ECP endpoint. So again, some code and component information. After that, we'll be redirected to the dashboard page and we'll be waiting for the approval on component directory side. So let's proceed with registration. I'll firstly download the registration key store. Here, the password, then the URL of the component directory. And its code. Then I will continue with specification of the ECP endpoint code, which will be in this case Panda. We can optionally set some project and environment name. These names will be then displayed here on the page header. So I will fill some values there. So webinar, and let's say the name of the server, and also some company information, which is mandatory fields. So some organization, webinar, let's say some contact person, email, and also phone number in a format which started with 2 zeros. I would need to check that I read and understood the GDPR disclaimer, which is right here. This will just the information that this information will be shared with the component directory administrator and also the ECP network. And I can submit the request. So right now, the ECP endpoint just sent the registration request to the ECP component directory. And as you can see, the current status is registering and it's waiting for approval on the component directory side. So I will do that. Approve the request. And after the check, the endpoint will change its status to active. Another step will be the configuration of the AMQP context. This part is not necessary, or it's not necessary to configure the AMQP channel. You can configure any other integration channel you would like to use. But in this case, we will use the AMQP, and it's also the prerequisite for the Unix toolbox. So basically, in the runtime configuration, I will set the AMQP API enabled to true, and then define the B name and type name for send handler. With this configuration, the endpoint will be sending the messages to its EDX toolbox. So yeah, you can see that the endpoint has synchronized. The initial synchronization is just unsuccessful, and the endpoint is in active state. So right now we will create a message path. The creation of message path is described in a function smoke test chapter, and specifically the configure message path chapter. So basically on the GUI, just click the new path button and fill the information there. So create a message path, we'll use the indirect path, and use Gorilla ECB broker, and I will not limit the message type for this path. Okay, save. And after the next synchronization, the endpoint will be able to fully communicate with other endpoints. Yes, so let's get back to the presentation. So we have installed ECP endpoint, we have set the encrypted passwords, registered the ECP endpoint, and we'll also change the configuration and user properties, but we also need to change the configuration in runtime configuration. So as I mentioned, I will do it in the runtime configuration and repeat these properties. Regarding the runtime configuration, there are two options how to edit it. You can export the configuration, then do the changes there and import it back, or you can choose the graphical user interface for that and set those properties here. So I will do it this way. So the API enabled set to true, and then the send handler bean name and type name be names to API send handler and the type name asterisk, because we want to send all the message types to the EDX toolbox. The save button, and the endpoint should reload its configuration. With this done, we can proceed with installation of EDX toolbox. Again, with encrypted passwords. Because we will be running the ECP and EDX on the same server, the change of the ports will be necessary. So we'll do that as well. And we will need to also change the configuration of the EDX toolbox, so fill the code, port, etc. And then replace the key store. More about that later. So let's check the documentation. Check the EDX installation guide, specifically chapter 6.3. Installation on Linux. The installation process is the same as this for ECP endpoint, just install the application using rpm-i command, and then it is followed by the configuration change and etc. So I'll do that. So I will move to the correct folder. Here's the installation file. I can install it using the rpm command. You can see that the EDX Toolbox user with ID 2020 was created for this component, and the EDX Toolbox is installed. Right now, I will set up the encrypted passwords. The procedure is the same as this for ECP endpoint, and it's described in chapter 6.3.9. Yeah, custom password. So, as I mentioned, the same procedure as it is for ECP endpoint. Just execute the configure password script and fill those values there. So I will move to EPC EDX Toolbox. Here's the script, and I will execute it. So again, I will choose the option 2, encrypted, and also encrypted for technical accounts. Then some key and confirmation of the key. In this case, I will also use the default encryption algorithm. So I'll just hit the enter and then fill in the password. In this case, you can see that password is set for administrator account, the authentication key store, internet broker, and ECP broker, and also for database connection. And right now, as I mentioned, the ECP endpoint and EDX Toolbox are running on the same server, so I would need to change the ports. This change is described in chapter 6.5. So I will move there. Yeah, so installation on the same machine with ECP endpoint, and in this case, it's EDX Toolbox installed on Linux. So I will go to the enable.conf file, which is the configuration file for the service, and I will change the port from 8 to 9, basically. Then I would also need to run the systemctl daemon reload command. So let's continue with that. So I will go to PC, systemd, system, and here you can see the folder for EDX Toolbox service. And here's the enable.conf file. So I will edit it and change the port so there will be no collision with ECP endpoint. We'll basically change for 8 to 9. I will save the file and reload the daemon. This is done, and we can continue with the configuration of EDX Toolbox. Configuration changes are described in chapter 7. So yeah, right here. So EDX Toolbox configuration, and here are the configuration files, and also the description of configuration of EDX properties. So far, non-HA installation. So the single deployment. we will need to change the toolbox code and service catalog code, pull public URL in case we will be using pull messaging, and also the ECP broker MQP port and the host, depending on the connection of the ECP endpoint. Let's move back to ECCX toolbox. Can configure the edx.properties. So I will change the toolbox code, should be Panda. This code needs to be the same as for the ECP endpoint. I will also set the service catalog code, which is Lion in this network, and can continue with the rest of the properties. So here's the configuration of internal broker, and we would need to firstly change the port because we are running it on the same server. So change the port to 6672, and also change the out alias because we will be reusing the certificate from the ECP endpoint. And here in this part, there is configuration of the ECP broker, which is the ECP endpoint internal broker. So it's running on this port. It's on the same server, so we can keep the localhost here, and we will need to just change the out alias to ECP module out. That will be everything for the configuration and the EDX properties. So I will save the file, and also I will copy the authentication key store from ECP endpoint to EDX toolbox. I will move to the var lib and EDX toolbox directory. Here you can see the default key store JKS, but we will copy the out key store from the ECP endpoint. Again, var lib, ECP endpoint, out key store, copy it here. Here's the file. I will just rename firstly the key store to something like this, and then also rename the out key store JKS because the EDX toolbox is currently configured to use keystore.jks file. Also, it will be necessary to change the permissions for that file. So I will use clone command to change the ownership of the file. So EDX toolbox EDX toolbox for keystore JKS. So the owner is changed to EDX toolbox, and I will also just make sure change the permissions of the file to 750. So the key store is copied, and we can proceed with the next step, which will be the start of the EDX toolbox. So again, let's check it within documentation. And this is described in chapter 6.3.5. Yeah. Here, starting and stopping EDX toolbox. And we'll be again using the systemctl start command. Let's start the application. Let's check its global user interface. In the meantime, the ECP endpoint is successfully synchronized. It's installed on version 4.11, so we can try to send a message. But I will send it to itself. So we choose some file as a payload. And the message is sent, successfully sent and received. So the messaging on this ECP endpoint works correctly. Also, the edX toolbox already started, so I will log in the user interface. You can see the GUI of edX toolbox. We can change the network configuration, and the toolbox was not synchronized yet because it is not added to the network configuration yet. So I will quickly do that. So on the service catalog, I will just download the latest version, the network configuration, and I will add the newly installed toolbox there. So Manda, some name, so Manda toolbox, and it will be in the same party and domain as the rest of the toolboxes. Save the file and then just upload new version of configuration back to service catalog. With this, the service catalog should send configuration to the edX toolbox. So it does. So here we can see that the toolbox name, party name, and publish subscribe version are filled in together with this line with network configuration. I will send some test message, and I will send it to Zebra. And you can see that the message was successfully sent and received by the receiver. You can check also the receiver, which is right here. And then here you can see the message also on the receiver side. So the message was successfully sent and received. So let's do the presentation again. So we have installed edX toolbox. We have set the custom encrypted passwords, changed the ports, changed the configuration to make the integration with ECP endpoint. Also changed the eStore and started. You could see the version on the graphical user interface on edX toolbox. It's displayed right here in the corner. So version 1.0. We also did the last step, which is send and receive the message via ECP and EDX. So the ECP endpoint and EDX toolbox are successfully installed and configured. That will be everything for the installation part. If you have any questions, you can ask.
Gabor is asking if we can change the color scheme of clients. endpoint toolbox?
Sure, it is possible only on ECP endpoint, not on EDX toolbox, but on ECP endpoint we can do it also in the runtime configuration and with the property ECP up theme. So the default is the purple, and we can change it to blue, for example.
And the last option is white.
The last option is white, yeah, but that looks kind of strange. But yeah, you can change the color of the header.
Yeah, nevertheless, it's not possible to change it for toolbox.
Yeah.
So we can just recommend to use these labels
Yeah.
at the top.
It's also possible on EDX toolbox, but it seems to be done in EDX properties. But you can see here on service catalog that you have also the labels there. Any other question? Probably not. So we can continue with the upgrade. So firstly, we will check the graphical user interface and version of the components. Then we will stop ECP and EDX and slowly upgrade ECP together with Java. And because we will be upgrading Java, we would also need to upgrade EDX toolbox on the same time in parallel with ECP endpoint. So we'll do that, then update the configuration, remove old Java and start the application. The same procedure for EDX toolbox as well. Then we will again check the GUI and versions and try the messaging. So let's start with ECP endpoints. Let's check the versions. Here's the endpoint. You can see version. It's currently running 4.1 version, and here in the EDX toolbox currently running version 4 for 1.11. Sorry. Regarding the upgrade itself, let's check the documentation. Let's start with ECP. So the upgrade on Linux is described in chapter 5.2. Right here, yeah, upgrade on Linux. So we will stop the application, upgrade to Java 17. The procedure will be same as it was for the upgrade for Java 8 to Java 11. So we will basically just install a new version of Java, change the Java security file. It's described here, and we will not remove Java 11 before the upgrade of the ECCoSP applications. We will do it after. So let's proceed with this. So I will connect to the server. And I will stop the ECP endpoint. And also, because they are running on the same server, the EDX toolbox. And we can check the Java, and you can see that we have installed Java 11. So we will continue with the Java upgrades. Okay. So as I mentioned, we will install the GL17. We will use the yum install GL17 OpenJDK command, and then we will proceed with the installation of the new version or the upgrade via rpm -u command. So let's install the version of Java. Install Java 17 OpenJDK. Confirm this, and Java will be installed. So Java 17 is successfully installed, and we can proceed with upgrade of the ECP endpoint. So again, let's check the documentation, ECP application upgrade, and the endpoint can be upgraded or will be upgraded by the rpm-u command. Let's move to the directory with the installers, and let's upgrade the ECP endpoint by rpm-u command. Yeah, so the application was successfully upgraded, and right now we will update the configuration. The configuration update is described in chapter 5.2.7, so update configuration. And because we are upgrading from the ECP 4.1, we will need to do these changes. So these changes are about the change of the TLS version, because the previous version supports also the TLS 1.2. So we will be just changing it to remove the TLS 1.2 and keep just the 1.3. So in a survey XML, I will add this line, this SSL implementation name property, and also I will remove the TLS 1.2 protocol from the enabled protocols and take the ciphers. So let's proceed. It's survey XML. So it's located. So let's move to USR share ECP endpoint, and right here in the conf folder there is our server XML file. Let's check the file. Let's find the HTTPS connector, which is here, and here you can see that currently there is also TLS 1.2 configured in SSL enabled protocols. So I will remove it, and I will also change the ciphers because there are currently two sets of ciphers, one for TLS 1.2 and one for TLS 1.3. So we would need to change it to have there only the ciphers needed for 1.3 version. Repeat from the documentation. So right here, keep only these ciphers in the ciphers attribute. So I will do that. I will Copy them here. So this is the not the final configuration because we also need to add the SSL implementation name. Good. So I will add it right here. So that will be everything for the configuration of the server XML. So I will save the file. And right now we would also need to check at least the internal broker configuration files, which are located in etc/ecp endpoint/gms. And we will be checking basically the same thing as it was in the server XML, so the TLS versions and the ciphers. So let's move to etc/ecp endpoint. Here you can see the GMS folder. So I will go there, and there are the ActiveMQ configuration files and also the folders. And depending on the selected profile, the separate file will be used. We are using like SSL via JKS, so our configuration file will be located in this folder. JKS, and as we are running non-HAL profile, so basic single deployment using embedded Derby database, this file is the one we are using. But also you can change all of them. It's maybe the better option, but in this case, I will just update this one. Let's find the transport connector, and in this URI, there should be just TLS 1.3. The previous version there was also 1.2, and in case that there will be some custom changes, this file will not be updated during the upgrade. But as we had the default configuration there, the file was written to the latest and the correct one. So for us at this point, there's no need to change the configuration here because it's already using just the TLS version 1.3. So this is the this is a little bit easier on the Linux than on Windows, for example. Right now, we can continue with the removal of Java 11, but because we are running this EDX toolbox on the same server, we would need to also upgrade that before the Java removal. So let's check the EDX upgrade guide and check the upgrade procedure for EDX toolbox. And this is mentioned in chapter 5.2, original Linux. So firstly, install the application. We already did that. Also, upgrade to Java 17. We already have the Java 17 there. So we will continue with the EDX toolbox application upgrade. So in the same way as it is for ECP endpoint, we will be using the rpmu command to upgrade the file, and then we will share the configuration and update it if necessary. So let's move to the installation webinar. Here are the installation files. I will use rpmu to upgrade the EDX toolbox, the latest version, so 1.12. yeah, so here you can see that the EDX toolbox is successfully upgraded. There are also some RPM new files for EDX properties and default keysert JTS, which is in this case correct. And we can continue with the configuration update, which is described in 5.2.7 right here. So the same thing as for ECP endpoint, to the server XML, and add the SSL implementation name to the HTTPS connector, and check the TLS 1.3 version if it's there or not. And if there is also TLS 1.2, then we can remove it. Let's check the file. Share EDX toolbox and conf folder. Here is the server XML file. So let's find the HTTPS connector, which is, yeah, this one. And you can see that there is also the TLS 1.2. So we will need to change that. Also, important thing to note is that if you are using some business application for the integration to the EDX toolbox or ECP endpoint, and it is being integrated via HTTPS, and the business application does not support the TLS 1.3, then it's recommended to leave the TLS 1.2 there, because without it, the connectivity, the connection between the business application and the ECCoSP component will not work. The same applies also for the ActiveMQ configuration files. So if you are integrated via AMQP, and your business application does not support the TLS 1.3, then you would need to leave the TLS 1.2 in the configuration files. But in this case, I will remove the TLS 1.2. I will also change the ciphers. We have only one set for TLS 1.3. It from the documentation and paste it there. And I will also add the SSL implementation name attribute. I'll put it again right here. And that will be everything for the configuration change in the server XML. So right now, only TLS 1.3 will be used for the connection to the HTTPS port. So I will save the file, and we can continue with check of the configuration in the ActiveMQ configuration files. So they are again located in the same place as for ECP endpoints. So let's move to etc EDX toolbox. Here you can see the JMS folder. So JMS. And again, there is also folder secured if you are using SSL. If not, then these are your files. But we are using SSL, so let's go to secured. And also we are using non-HA profile, so I will check that one. JMS text. And let's check the transport connectors. And here again in the URL, let's check the TLS version. And again, because the file was previously not changed, it was the default configuration, the file was rewritten, so there is already TLS 1.3 together with the correct ciphers. So there is no need for us to change this configuration at this point. We can also check the env.conf file because we have changed the port. So just to make sure that the EDX will be using the correct ports. System. It's ECCoSP, conf. And you can see that during the upgrade, the env.conf was not updated, so it's still using the correct ports. So we can continue with removal of Java 11. Also, it's also mentioned that if we are using Kilo or LDAP, the web services will be using the LDAP or Kilo authentication. Also, important thing if you are using it. And yeah, here we can continue with the removal of Java 11. So just use yum erase Java 11 over JDK command, and then just to make sure the headless, but this dependency should be removed during this removal. So yum erase Java 11 over JDK. So yeah, here you can see that also the headless will be removed. So I'll confirm that. And yeah, the headless is also removed. So if I do like this, yeah, there's nothing to do. So right now we can continue next step, which will be starting the applications. So I will firstly start TCP endpoint. You can also check the Java. So Java 17 is used. Yeah, start the TCP endpoint and also the EDX toolbox. In the meantime, we can do the presentation. So we have upgraded the ECP endpoint, upgraded the Java, changed the configuration, and removed the Java 11. So we are right now starting the ECP endpoint. The same applies for EDX toolbox as well. So Java is updated as well as configuration. So we will check the graphical user interface, the versions there, and then send some message. Make it green. It may take a few seconds, maybe a minute. And yeah, here you can see that the command started, and here you can also see the version for 11 currently. So let's send a message. I will send it again to myself. So Zebra, some message type, and file. Yeah, you can see that the message was successfully sent and received by the endpoint. And let's check the EDX toolbox. Also started, and here you can see the version 112. So the upgrade was successful. We can again send some message from EDX toolbox. So Panda as a receiver, some message type, and one file. And on the sender side, you can see that the message is in received status, so the message was successfully sent and received. And on the receiver side, we check it as well. And here you can see that the message is also here successfully received. So the upgrade of ECP endpoint and EDX toolbox was successful. So yeah, so we check the version on GUI and also send and receive the message via ECP and EDX. So if you have any questions, you may ask. Nothing. So
Yeah, there is one.
progress. Yeah.
Maybe there is point to deliver batch part installation upgrade script. This version to automated control and work routines. Yeah, currently there was no request for such a script for automation. So maybe that can be recorded as ECCoSP ticket and then validated by CDS group in ENTSO-E.
Yep. So Oleg, so the process for any new request, you can send an email to ecp@entso-e.eu and we will log as a ticket, and all tickets are validated by the CDS working group who manages this or the CR or prioritize the work for the releases. So if it is something, then yeah, it can be considered. We can add it in our backlog and then based on the priority can be delivered.
Is there any other question you want to ask? If not, then we would like to thank you for your attention and participation on this webinar. And well, see you on the next one.
Yeah, thanks, Daniel and Lucas. Thank you all. So as mentioned in the start of the webinar, we will upload this recording from today and the one which was done on 23rd on our YouTube channel. And we have another webinar plan in June, which is on the high availability. You can find that information on the ECCoSP web page. This information also, we will be circulating this information as part of our monthly newsletter. So you can register there. And in case if you need any help or support, or there have any further queries, or there is any new request to be included in the next releases, then you can send out an email to us at ecp@entso-e.eu and we will get back to you on that part. So thank you very much, everyone, and we can close if there are no further queries or questions. Okay, then thank you, everyone, and thank you, Daniel and Lucas, one more.